All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and set up the recording. So welcome to our 6-part series turned into 9-part series of the Get Real Leadership Coach Training. And my name is Jenn Barley. I'm alongside with Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hey, Jen.
Hi. So
Hi.
we're excited. What?
Hi.
Hi. We're excited to be here with you today. We have some interesting things and fun things planned for everybody. And we've been having a really good time with this series. We've done a lot of exploration around trust and leadership. We've done some trends that have been happening in the leadership and team arena. We've shared emotional intelligence insights and how to work with that. And we've had panel discussions and a lot of just really great things that have been happening. And we got a lot of people saying hello. Hey, Tom, and Jen's here from DC. And so we're really great. It's great to see everybody. Today's going to be a little bit different. Today, you guys are going to be a big old part of this with us, okay? So we're going to break it down in the following way. This is going to be a group discussion. So around a leadership coaching. So what I'm going to do in a moment is bring everybody over to this side of the partition, so to speak. If you do not want your camera on when you come over, all you have to do is to click on stop video, and then your camera won't be on. So don't even worry about that, or put a Post-it over your camera, whatever works. I and Karen personally would rather see your face and have it be more connected, but since we didn't prep you for it, we get it. Right, Karen?
We do.
We do get it. So, and then what we're going to do is we are going to do what we call a coaching intensive style. Okay. So we have one of two ways to approach it. And so hang tight. So I'll bring everybody over now. Sound good, Karen?
Go right ahead, Jen.
All right. So what this means is I just promote you to panelists, and it's going to have you come over to our side of the wall, so to speak. And like I said, if you don't want your video on, just hit stop video. We won't make anybody do that. We do love to see people's faces, but this way we're in a big old Brady Bunch style room. And if you guys want to change your view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you could do speaker view or gallery view. And if you do gallery view, you get to see everybody all at once, not just the person who's particularly talking. Right, Karen?
Correct.
Great. Okay, good. So people are coming over. And so we're going to do this one of two ways. This is the first way we're going to try it and see if this works, is we're going to be looking for a volunteer. And we want somebody to be a client around a leadership topic, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be in a corporate environment. It could be being a leader as anywhere in life, or with your family, or with a community, or on a board of directors, or within work. So if anybody is having a particular leadership challenge, right? So it could be around people, it could be around decision making, it could be around prioritizing. It doesn't matter what the topic is to us. I am holding on, Karen.
So everybody's saying that they can't hear any sound. Is it just Jen, or can you guys hear me?
It's when you make us panelists, we have to turn our sound back on again.
Okay.
You hit the little the little microphone in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. I guess this is pointless. Thank you for whoever's typing, because I'm telling the people who can't hear me. Just so you know.
All right, cool. So everybody's good now?
Yes.
So Jen, you can continue.
Oh, good. It's funny, Kara, I'm looking at people and bringing it over and just talking, which is sort of how I roll. And so I didn't even see the timeout sign. Okay, perfect. All right, so good. So we have people here. So this is wonderful. So what I was saying is that we'd love for somebody who has some kind of leadership challenge to be a client, for us to be able to work on a coaching session. This is what we call coaching intensive style. And but we do want it to be a leadership topic. It could be around anywhere that you might be having challenges. Doesn't matter to us. And oh, actually, Tom, I
Yes.
think you're up. I think
Oh,
you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you. This is not my direct issue. This is more my wife's issue. But if you remember, you talked to my wife Heidi about her situation on the job where she was a part-time employee for a nonprofit, and she had an office. And then her boss came into her like 2 weeks ago and said that they needed her office. They were moving her desk out into the hallway because they were bringing in a full-time employee, an artist for their nonprofit.
Yeah, totally.
Consequently, my wife felt very devalued with her position there after 2 years, and she felt very dismissed.
Okay, hold that thought, Tom. This is going to be great. So Tom's volunteering because he's having sort of a leadership challenge because his wife is having a leadership challenge, right? So
Correct.
we're two removed on this. I'm going to have you be the client. I want to do a setup for everybody, but this is a great scenario because as we know when we're working with leaders and organizations is often people will come to a session about somebody else, right? So sometimes it's about themselves. I want to grow this way and I want to do these things. But sometimes it could be, as Tom is going to bring, the situation that's affecting him, but there's somebody else involved with it. So I think this will be a good example, right, Kara?
I think this will be good.
Okay, so I did put everybody on mute. Just, I think I got everybody on mute almost, except for Tom, Karen, and myself. And I just got Pamela. Oh, whoops, I just did it. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, you guys. In a moment, Tom did just give us a little brief overview. We're going to have him share a little bit more. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion about how would we coach this? What are the questions that we would ask? Everybody, what I want you to do is listen to Tom and then write down some things that pop up for you in terms of a question you would ask. Karen and I then are going to share some insights about some of the questions. So this becomes a learning lab around a real situation. Tom himself may not get resolution, and that's okay. Meaning I will support Tom in any way moving forward if we don't come to a conclusion. But this is really about being able this is about really being able to deconstruct a coaching session while it's actually happening. So, okay. Anything else you want to add there, Karen?
No, I think that one of the things that I just want to throw out here ahead of time is when you're listening to the story that Tom's going to tell us, what I would love for you to do is have the question in your head be, all right, if I'm really curious right now, what is it that I want to know? So it's almost like asking yourself, okay, so why is he telling me this? Instead of just saying, hey, Tom, why are you telling me this? You know, in your head, like what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help you get in my head. So as I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm going to be sitting here going, so I wonder why he's telling me this. So what am I really curious about? And those are the two big things that any conversations that I have, that I really, that's my mindset for the beginning of the conversation. It's not, holy shit, what's the next question I have to ask? And it's not being stuck in my head about, oh crap, what's the question? What's the question? What's the question? Or getting kind of like freaked out about that, because then I'm not paying attention to what's really going on.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds good. Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, if you for some reason can't hear what's going on, there is a little icon in the bottom left hand of the screen that if you click on the headset icon, that's going to work out fine for you. Okay, so everybody ready, Tom? And then you're going to give us a start, and then we're going to take it from there, and you're going to pay attention to what questions resonate with you and how you respond to them. So we'll walk you through it. There's no right or wrong with any of this. You good to go, Tom?
I'm ready. Do you want me to do the narrative of the story again?
Sure. And then, yes, I would like for you to just share a little bit of the story, just like you would if you were starting a coaching session. So I'll frame it up by asking you, so Tom, what is it today that you want to focus on? And then you take it from here.
Okay. So I'm trying to see the best way that I can support my wife in her challenge with her employer.
Great. So give us a little background of what's happening.
Okay. So about 3 weeks ago, my wife came home and I said to her, as I usually do, how was work today? And she said it was okay, in a low energy voice. And I said, so tell me, what do you mean? What's going on? And she said, well, Jackie, her boss, her direct boss above her, asked her to come into her office for a meeting. Jackie then informed my wife that they needed her office because they had hired a full-time artist. My wife works part-time for a nonprofit here in Baltimore, Maryland. She's been there for a little over 2 years now. When she was originally hired, they gave her the office, and she needs the office because, first of all, she needs to be able to concentrate, and she does social media for this nonprofit. So she needs a quiet workspace. So her boss told her that they were moving her desk to the hallway of the office space where they're in, and the artist was going to be assuming my wife's office. And my wife was really taken aback by the whole situation. She didn't know how to respond. And so when she came home, I said, well, that's natural that you're upset. You feel like you've been devalued. And this is a place that you thought that you were respected. And she said, you're right. She goes, I don't feel respected in my job. I feel like my position is almost inconsequential. So I was conflicted at the moment because I immediately thought that she was going to quit, and we depend on my wife's position at her job for health insurance. So I was conflicted at that moment because part of my concern was more selfish as opposed to my wife's direct need for support from me. But I did end up giving her support. I just don't know how to continue to support her because she's unhappy.
Perfect. All right. Great, Tom. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and having us be able to use this as a really real life situation that you might be able to get some good answers from, and we're going to be able to get some practice coaching. So to the coaches on the call then, it's, as Karen said, about getting curious about what's going on. What is coming up for you in terms of what you would ask Tom? And so, Tom, you're not going to answer these one by one. If you want to jot them down, you can, to be able to say what direction you want to go in a bit. But who has a question that we could hear? And you have to unmute yourself to be able to do that. Who wants to go first? And you just put it out there.
Hey, I'll jump in.
All right.
So it was interesting because my first leaning was toward his wife and wanting to problem solve, right? But then I realized the issue is really around Tom's conflict. And so the question that I would have is, tell me more, or what do you feel conflicted about?
Okay. Okay, great, Jen. I know how many of you, and you can just do it by a show of hands, are so wanting to help Tom's wife right now, right? Because we all consider, oh my gosh, I've been devalued, or we could help her own her worth and stuff. So the tendency whenever anybody brings up somebody else is to try to coach the other person who's not there. right? So, we'll give ideas or suggestions or how do we coach with it. It's really important about how do we actually help Tom with what he needs, which is different than what his wife is experiencing. So Jenn, great job on that, right? So, and I loved how you also caught yourself. So Jenn started and she said, I would say, tell me more about, and then she stopped that and she went to what's the conflict, right? So I'm paraphrasing, but what's the conflict? What's the conflict is so much stronger than tell me more about. Often when we do a tell me more, you are going to get more story. You're going to get more details. You're going to get it's a pretty broad question, but it tends to pull out story, not challenge and perspective. And Tom was great. He used the word conflict. So when Jenn reworded that to be about conflict, it was a stronger question because we're going to find out that point of tension of what's happening for Tom. So, Kara, is there something you would add to that before we hear more questions?
No. And just a question. Do we want Tom to jot down the questions?
Yes.
Okay.
And I also
I did.
Great.
Yeah,
Cool.
Okay, good. So this is fun, Tom. It's pretty cool to be the the client in these kinds of calls because you'll learn more and you get tons of questions and you will laser in on this, and it's fun. And it's also interesting because sometimes we'll talk about you like you're not in the room, even though we know you are. Okay, who else has another question?
I do. I'll ask a question.
Okay, we'll go Erica and then Beth. Go ahead, Erica.
I want to know, I really want to know what does he mean by support, and like the belief about, there's a belief there, he describes support, so I'm as acknowledging and validating, but what else is he meaning, what else does support mean? And then obviously like, what does he believe, what power does he believe that he has by supporting his wife? What does he think is going to happen if he supports his wife?
Okay, good. So there's a whole bunch of questions in there, right? But it's really about the relationship to support, right? So what I'm going to sort of just break down what Erica said. Her first one is what do you mean by support, and what does it look like, and where's the power in the support? All of that is understanding a little bit more about what Tom says he's looking for, and I think it's and it's great, right? So there's a whole bunch of different directions to be able to go with support. Awesome.
And I think, Jenn, just to piggyback on that, when we as coaches, sometimes we get the thing in our head, we say, okay, great, like Tom said, I don't remember what he said, how do I continue to support my wife? And we hear support and what support means to us. So the great part about Erica's question is we really want to know, what does support mean to him? So this is what Jenn and I, one of the questions that Jenn and I always call the Barney Rubble question, right? The short, the broad, clarifying question, right? What do you mean by support? Because we need to know what it means for him, not what it means for us.
Sweet. Good job. All right, Beth, you're up.
Thanks. Now you have me second guessing my question, but I'm going to go with it.
No, go for it, because it's great no matter what it is.
So first of all, Tom, I think that it was really awesome that you realized that this was a conflict that you were having with yourself and you sort of stopped yourself short, which I think shows great emotional intelligence. The question that I would ask is, what made you automatically assume that she was going to leave the company?
So let me ask you this, Beth. So what's behind that question? Like, where did that question come from for you?
It just sounded like fear. And he went right to like the worst thing that could be happening. When she normally comes home from work, from what he said, and said, things are good, but this was one time that it wasn't good. So why that automatic fear of assumption, or why was he assuming that she was going to leave the company?
Okay.
I know, does that get into the story too much, or?
Well, it's interesting. It could, right? So Karen, did you have comments?
No, that was just my a little bit could get into the story.
So there's a couple of things here, Beth, that I love that you brought this up. So when I was first listening to Tom, I heard a whole bunch of things. And then I heard he said it was a little bit conflicted. And then I felt selfish and I want to know how to support. Okay. Mm-hmm. So those were things.
Right.
It is so easy. And I'm not saying you did this. I'm bringing up the sort of fear part. It is so easy to jump on well, let's talk about you and feeling selfish, right? And let's go down that little rabbit hole of figuring out what that's all about. And the truth is we don't know how much energy there is around it. It's great awareness. I love in your validation, great recognition of the conflict that was coming up. And that's really good. And we're still right now. So we're finding out what I like to say, who is Tom in relationship to this challenge, right? What motivates him? What's his intention? What is he driving towards? Even before he says he wants support, truthfully, we don't know if he wants that now, because often our clients will come to us saying one thing, and then they really they bring something else to the table. The interesting thing about the assumption of leaving the company is it's a pretty minor detail at this moment when we're still pretty helicoptered out above the actual story. You could do it and be successful, but you would have to make sure you loop it back. So let's say, Beth, you did say that, right? So you jumped right into the assumption she's going to leave the company, what's behind that or whatever. He says something, he answers, there might be one more question. You have to then bring it way back up and say, okay, so now that we understand that, where do you want to focus the call? We can't assume that we're going to take that road for the entire part. So it's not a right or a wrong. It's just you have to know when you drill down so early on one thing, how do you helicopter back out to give it perspective? So I think it's good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I just felt like I needed one more point of clarification to sort of go back, but that could have been confusing.
Right. You just have to be able to get out of that chosen path because we're still not quite sure what Tom really needs. We have an idea, but we're not sure. Yeah, good.
Perfect.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay, how about one more question? Who has one they want to ask? And then we'll throw it back to Tom and then we'll keep going.
So just reiterating it kind of in what you just said, because I was right where you were in thought process, but now would be the time, I guess, is because really his initial question, right, was the agenda for today. So we go back to ICF and setting the agenda. His agenda for today was he wants to know how to support his wife, correct?
So far. That's what he has said.
And so now that we've asked all these questions, it would be circling back. So assuming we've got responses, whatever, it would be circling back. Could you go with, I wrote down something and I don't think that works though. Okay, never mind.
Are you sure, Kat?
Yeah, because and it is hard because I was with his wife for a while thinking, are we coaching going to try to practice leadership with his wife's problem and he's going to channel his wife? Are we going to him, and then you corrected and said, no, we're sticking with him. I know we want to lean the other direction. And then I heard some other things. So sorry. Yeah. Cause I put then, what would you like the result to be from this call, circling back with all these different areas and topics, but it's hard because we haven't heard from him yet.
Right. Okay. So good. So Karen, let me throw you on the spot. Did you have a question that came up for you, Karen?
No, you know what? I think that the big thing that popped up for me was that I love the fact that people didn't go chase it, what I like to call the chasing the inner critic route, right? So because we heard the selfish thing pop up, right? We heard the fear pop up. We actually heard a respect thing pop up. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to keep these kind of things in the back of your head, because they're not the things, like Jen said, to throw out right now, but they're the things to just start to pay attention to if these things pop up again. So right here, Jen, I'm still in the discovery phase of this and I want to know a little bit more. But the thing that popped up for me, if you were going to say, okay, what question would you have asked? I'm going the same with the conflict. I want to know what's the real struggle here.
Okay.
But wait, the struggle for him or for her? That's where you lost me on the things popping up.
Him.
Okay, and Kat, for me, it's always about him. Doesn't I'm not Tom? Not that I don't care about your wife, but my concern is Tom. This is all about him with this issue, not how do we fix her or her issue. It's the how do we help him get clarity, get awareness, get something on what he actually needs for this call, not what does she need.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would ask a version of, I would just say, wow, it sounds like, I do a little bit of reflecting and validating, but it sounds like that this is something that you're looking for support, and you caught yourself in a couple of different reactions to things that are going on. And my question would be, what makes this really important to you right now? It's a little bit different. Karen's is what is the conflict. Mine is what's making this important. But it's still trying to figure out what he's really going for. So 2 different angles on that. So Tom,
Sure.
you have a bunch of questions and you heard us talk a bunch. What's running through your head right now, or what question stands out for you?
Well, we can go through these one at a time. I wrote down the first one, which was, what is the conflict for me, or Tom?
Uh-huh.
So the conflict for me is stepping outside of the story, because I'm actually involved in the story. I'm a participant in the story because it's my wife,
Mm-hmm.
and my wife's job impacts our whole family. So what is the conflict for me is disseminating as a support for my wife, and at the same time being logical about the impacts of what the decision would be if she became so unhappy with the situation that she quit.
Great.
So do you want me to go through each question and just kind of and get clarity on those?
So I want to say something, and then we can, but I just want to point this out to the team of coaches here. I love that. It's about, is it support for a wife, or is it about being logical about the impact? And I want to know how those 2 things are connected or disconnected. That's just where my head goes. I sit there and go, that's interesting. Why can't they exist together? Or how does one really help the other? Like, I just want to know about those 2 particular things. So as I'm listening to it as a coach, I'm like, connect those dots for me would be sort of a direction. But Tom, you don't have to do that now. I just want to highlight that for the learning moment, but you can continue through the questions now.
Okay, so question 2 was, I think, what do I mean by supporting my wife?
Yep.
And then there was a second part to that. What is the relationship to supporting my wife? Correct?
Well,
So,
I paraphrased that to say that's what Erica was exploring, was the relationship of supporting. So
okay.
Go ahead.
So what do I mean by what I mean by supporting my wife is being there for her, listening to her, and just giving her the space to vent her frustration without entering in my concerns, which we already know.
Mm-hmm. Great. I have thoughts, but continue on.
Because I'll tell you, my initial, when she started to tell me the story, I started to be, I recognized that I was becoming triggered, and I started to sense that part of me wanted to be dismissive and say, just suck it up and don't worry about it. but I was very self-aware at that moment, and I recognized that that was not the right place to go, and that wouldn't have been appropriate. So I didn't say anything, but I also felt that if I were in her position, it would be very hurtful for me to be telling my partner that I was experiencing something, a challenge at work, and for my partner to say to me, just suck it up.
Yeah. Totally, right?
Right. Okay, so the third question was, what made me automatically assume she would leave the company? I thought about that when I heard that question, and I had to think about it for a minute and kind of retrace my steps. She's been hinting at her unhappiness with her boss for a while now, and how she felt her boss has zero emotional intelligence. And I kind of got the impression that sooner or later she would come to me and say, you know what, this is just not working out for me. So I kind of got the impression this was kind of like the last straw. And I was waiting for that shoe to drop. Anyway.
Okay, good.
And then the fourth question was yours. What makes this really important to me? What makes my desire to support my wife important to me, or what makes the situation important to me?
However you want to answer that.
Oh, okay. Well, she's my wife, and I obviously want her to be happy in her career, and I want her to feel fulfilled and enjoy what she's doing, because it is a 32-hour-a-week gig, so she's got to be there. B is that, it's part of our household, it's part of our dynamics for our household for her right now to be working in a position, because as I'm building my coaching practice and it's an independent job, we don't have health insurance. So it works for us currently that she is the breadwinner for the health insurance.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. So we got a lot of good data there. Now, Beth, your original question is kind of revealing itself in a bigger way through some of these comments, right? So, which is kind of interesting. So the question is, where do you guys go from here? There's a bunch of information, and who has a question that's popping up or something you want to talk through so that Karen and I can help with it? That's sometimes people will do that too. They'll say, I'm not really sure what my question is, but here's what's coming up for me. So you could take it either way, because I have a beginning of a question, but I don't know if I have the right wording for the question. So I'll share that at the end.
So I was thinking about just kind of a little bit of acknowledging and a little bit of tie-in, just so he can hear it back. But, Tom, you mentioned that you really want to be there for your wife. You want to listen to her, and you just want to support her. And that you had some concerns about consequences and the impact for the family as a whole. So how do you see bringing those together as both of those that you want? Like, how do you see doing both of that? Is that leading?
Let me think.
He said.
Yeah, let me think. Kara, do you think that's leading?
I wouldn't say that. No, because you're using the information that he kind of gave you.
So here's what I hear though, Kath. So you are using the information, and your question is, how do you use both, right? So just thinking out loud here, if we go back to the ICF core competencies, one is about direct communication. And direct communication is about being able to give back a mirror to the client and then asking a powerful question with it. So what I think you could do if you wanted to be clean as can be and not leading in any way is to be able to do the reflection and then to say, so what's making this an either or? So your question was, how do you bring both together? The direct communication is, wow, this feels like an either or thing. So how do you make it an either or? So your line of thinking is actually very similar to where I was having a hard time framing it myself. And I think that it's great, but that's just how you make it just a little bit more sharp and clean. Does that make sense, Kath?
A ton.
Yep. So that way, it's about finding out Tom's perspective of it being an either or, how can both exist or not exist, but it's not suggesting that both need to exist. It's saying right now it's A or B or black or white or either or.
Can I say something else that's popping up on the side that's just, I would have explored just a hair, but it's really probably not necessary? Is he is MSUing, he's making shut up a little bit on some of the assumption on her quitting. So just talking out loud, not coaching, but I mean, and you just mentioned direct communication and getting clarity and not storytelling. I mean, what's a healthy conversation with his wife look like so they both have clarity so he can support her, be what he wants to be for her and eliminate the stuff he's making up in his head, right?
Yeah, that though is
now clean it up, Barley. What?
That is suggesting, right? So what kind of conversation can you have to be able to get on the same page about this is about fixing the situation with the wife and a little bit of the suggesting.
Yeah. So how do you recognize with the direct communication that he really doesn't know? As he said, that was his fear of, hold on, we count on this. But it's.
Yeah. So a great way to do that is to say, so I'm curious, in what way is the fear of her wanting to quit impacting the way you're supporting her? Okay.
But hold on, we don't know if she really wants to quit, right? That was his MSU.
No, I know, but the thing is MSU is impacting how he's showing up. Right? Go ahead, Kara.
So the question here that I think I would ask regarding that piece of it, Kath, would be if you were to separate the facts from the fiction or the facts from the story that you've created, what's real?
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Maybe another way to approach it would be to ask him something like, if you were to remove the fear that she's going to quit, how would you ideally like to support her? Or just how would you trying to get him painting this picture of how he would ideally like to support her. How would you like to, if you could combine logic, this might be leading. This is a great discussion. If you could combine, like we all want to have the same idea, like, well, nobody says logic and emotion have to be separate, right? So if you could combine those two, the supporting her emotionally, because he gave that description. If you could combine that with expressing your concerns, like what would that look like?
Yeah, all different kinds of varying things, because right now it feels like they're very directly related and linked to one another. That one thought is preventing another. Perhaps we're still learning about this, but yes, good, Erica.
Okay, those were all legal questions. All right.
Yeah. Who else? What's coming up?
Hey, this is Jen. I have a question that's coming up, and it's around, Tom, what has it looked like in the past when you've supported your wife well?
Okay. All right, good. So what's it look like in the past when you supported your wife well? Good. Who else? Okay, the other Jen.
Oh, sorry. I have a question, kind of a question for you guys too. One of the things that came up for me was he mentioned that he was feeling triggered by it. And I just kind of wanted to ask, what's the trigger? Like, what is it? What's triggering you?
Mm-hmm. Good. Right? So it may be about the fear of losing the job, but there's something that's there, and being able to pinpoint that a little bit more is great. Good. Anybody else have a question? All right, Kara, did you have one that came up?
Yeah, I would probably go now with what I said before. If you're going to separate the fact from the fiction, what's real? And then the other part of me is I gotta go with this other question too. Would be, what would you say if I told you that this has nothing to do with your wife?
Good. And so, Kara, that's an interesting question. So what's behind that question for you?
Well, I get that it's about the support, but it's also, it's not about, this is all about Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And his way of how he wants to handle a difficult situation. So it's about how does he handle any difficult situation, right? How does he handle conflict? How does he handle when he has to support somebody else? But this whole thing really has nothing to do with his wife. And I think that part of me to asking that question is, I think this is what I like to call, me personally, is a little bit of a curveball question. because he's not expecting this kind of question. So I like to come in sideways, and I like to get people to think a little bit differently. So that's a little bit more about my thought process around this question.
Right. So I like the phrase curveball, right? Because the truth is, it is sort of a non-question and a question, right? So it's, what would you say? I mean, he's going to answer that. He's going to say something about it. But basically, it's the ability to say, to whatever thought process you have. Because it's about interrupting our stories, interrupting the way we go about things, and causing it what we like to call a perspective shift. This is the kind of question that is direct. And we do want to hear about it, right, to see what they think, blah, blah, blah. But really, it's just about getting that 2% degree shift in perspective. And this is giving the opportunity. Now, Tom could say, well, I'm curious to know what you mean by that. Or he may say, I know it has to do with me. Or he could go into a big story about something. You're still going to have to come up with a coaching question behind it. But what it's doing is it's taking Tom out of his story. So when people tell us their stories, and we all have them, and it's evidence to something that's going on, and it's the way we can tangibly explain what we're experiencing. It gives framework, it gives context, it gives evidence to whatever it is that's happening. So this is the kind of question that helps to get out of the evidence providing to get somebody to do a little introspection.
Oh, can I add another one to that mix, just with what Karen said and what you pulled?
Yes.
Like a scaling question. So Tom, how comfortable are you at this point with your wife being the primary breadwinner for health benefits?
So you got to then just, Kathy, if you're going to give a scaling question, let's identify what's the if we're going to go, what's the 1 and what's the 10?
Okay, 10 being incredibly comfortable, it doesn't bother you, you're good to let go of that and have it be on her. And 1 being you're not comfortable at all, it concerns you.
All right. Okay, Tom, we're going to throw it back to you to handle in any way that you to you to handle in any way that you want. What's running through your head?
Okay, so, which question do you want me to answer first?
Let me ask you this. Which question is the most provocative to you that you want to answer?
Karen's question.
Then good. Go with that.
That was, all the questions are really good, but Karen's was, it really hit me. It was like a gut punch a little bit, I guess you could describe
Karen.
it.
Be here all day.
So what would you say if I told you this has nothing to do with my wife? And I think that has a lot of merit. I think that it probably has very little to do with my wife. Maybe 90% me, 10% her. And it's probably fear-based. It's all fear-based for me because my assumption is that, oh shit, if she gets so frustrated with her position at work that she's going to leave and we're going to have to scramble for health insurance, until something else happens. So it's fear-based. And it's probably my fear-based more than hers, my wife's. Mm-hmm. So it's my own fear.
So what I'm just going to share what I would do is saying, so now that you've said that out loud, Tom, what's coming up for you? And I'm going to keep him right where he is, right? I'm not going to ask a new question. I just want to say, or what insight did you just have? Or what did you, I'm making all different things. What realization just came to you? Or as you said that out loud, what just came up for you? Or simply, now what? Okay. So we don't want Tom to pivot from this because he got a gut punch. And so just really staying in on what did he just learn about himself, in some capacity of asking that question will dictate the direction the coaching needs to go much more effectively than any other question we can ask right now, because we're still giving Tom's in the driver's seat. So Tom, I'll actually have you answer that. I asked it in many different shapes. The essence is the same, but basically, so as you said that out loud, what did you just realize?
That I am not in a position currently to support my wife because I probably need my own support.
Love it.
There's a conflict. There's a conflict here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what would you guys ask now? I'm not going to give away all my questions now. What would you ask now? This was great. Who wants to try a question? And you got to stay with Tom with where he is. That's my clue.
Well, for me, two questions come up. Tom, what do you need? And two, what is the conflict?
Great. Love it. Great. Both those questions are great questions. It's staying right where he is. Who else? Barry, go ahead.
Just how can we support you?
Great. You could even, Erica, did you have one? Or were you just moving your hands?
Yeah, no, I always will volunteer a question. I was just gonna ask, like, what kind of support do you need? Or having said that, now what? It's kind of like, okay, we're on to it now. What are you gonna do about that? Yeah,
good.
What kind of support do you need? It would be a nice question.
Yeah. I would say even something like, wow, that's a pretty huge insight. When we started, it was about supporting your wife. And what you come to realize is that you could use some support too. Right? to show what you're doing is illustrating the journey and the arc of the coaching so far. And then then just simply is, what do you want support around? And then that's when we're now renegotiating the coaching agreement, because there's always a thing behind the thing. So when Tom came to us, the thing was, I want to support my wife, and I also have a little bit of this conflict. The thing behind the thing is, wait a minute, I need support, and I need to figure out what that is. And it doesn't mean that we won't, and there could even be a thing behind that thing, right, Kara? This is Karen talking to me. Okay, go, Kara. You want to add to that, Karen?
No, that was it. That was there's more things behind the thing, because it's not just that he needs the support.
That's right. That's right. So, okay, here's what I want to do. So, because I'm looking at time, and I had said that we won't probably get to resolution on this. What I want to do is, I'm going to say we are going to sort of officially stop the coaching part of it, although we're going to debrief with Tom in a moment. And then, like I promised, Tom, if there's still some stuff that's open from this whole conversation, you and I can hop on the phone, and I'd be happy to work through it, because I don't want to leave you totally hanging, but there's no way to kind of finish this up in a clean spot in the next 8 minutes. So know that I am here for you to help you. So Tom, what do you think, being the client, was interesting about that process? What was interesting to you about what we just went through in the last 50 minutes?
That through the coaching exercise, the coaches were able to dissect what appeared to be something on the surface, but was really there's underlying issues or underlying coachable stuff.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, because if we would have stayed on the surface, not that it's not there, but that's not where the real work is. So the surface is, how do we get Tom to support his wife, or how do we get them to talk more, or something like that, right? So that's good. Good. Okay, so it's interesting. So I love these kinds of discussions. Like, I could do this all day, 8 hours a day, preferably live, right? Just this is so fun for Karen and I, because it is always so interesting, because we never quite know where things are going to go. This is what we call a coaching intensive. This is an intensive style that we've done. If you've taken our coaching intensive programs before, this is how we do it. And then obviously in our leadership program, we have these types of coaching intensives that happen 5 times throughout the 20 weeks. And then they're all recorded, and we work with small groups. So like Karen has a group of 10 people, Erica has a group of 10 people, I have a group of 10 people, and then we record them, so you actually get the opportunity to see, well, one we do all together, and then it's like 4 by 4, and then 16 additional ones of these to watch through the program. So it is always insightful, and it's always helpful to have these conversations, because we get feedback, and we also can see different approaches and different styles. So I really appreciate the format of this. To the coaches that are on the call, what stood out for you that you learned during this call? Like, what's something that's a takeaway from you that's going to help you be a better coach? And this afternoon, go ahead, Beth.
And you know what? It's something that I always do, but I think I have to put a sign by my desk that says "Stay high level."
Yeah,
because I get curious. I just need to know like one more piece of information before I could go back up. But I think I just need to stay high.
Good, love it. Love it. And if you do go down, get back up. You always coach from the helicopter view. It's where you always want to coach for the majority of the entire session. So that's awesome. Good. Who else?
For me, it was about the thing behind the thing. There's always something behind what is really kind of put down in front. And here it seemed to be the conflict that he was going through as well as the support that he himself needs. So that's what I learned.
Good. Excellent. Good. Who else?
I think even great awareness on not trying, because you want to, there's so much guts and the thing he can't control, the coach, and making sure you're staying centered around what he can control.
Love it.
I think one of the big things here too, guys, is just realizing the difference. And this is part of what we do in our program is, and in these intensives, is to help people separate the transformational coaching versus the transactional coaching. Because it would have been really easy to, when Tom says, okay, in the beginning, when he's like, okay, I want to figure out ways to support my wife, right? And come up with, okay, great. So what have you tried in the past that's been successful with supporting your wife? And come up with a list of different things. Or, okay, great. How about we brainstorm ideas? What do you think would be a really great way to support your wife? And what would have happened is we would have put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. And he could have helped her temporarily with some action items, but we're not getting to the real, like we're just talking about, the thing behind the thing. So this is the big difference between transformational and transactional coaching.
And the interesting thing here, I love that you said that, is in leadership coaching, most of the time, the leaders come in wanting to be transactional. How do I get this person to do that? How do I get my boss off my back? How do I blah, 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 blah. Just quickly give me a matrix on how to make better decisions, like all of those things. And so part of it is, how do you blend the two? And when do you move from transactional to transformational back to transactional? And how to be able to do that in a way that is going to have lasting results. And so that's something that Karen and I have been deconstructing and studying for a few years now, about when do things stay at the surface? How do you get into more of the inner work in a corporate environment when people tend to, not always, but tend to hold their emotions a little bit closer to their chest, don't want to reveal as much. Vulnerability is a bigger deal than some of our life clients. And it's really about navigating that, and with success, that really helps those corporate engagements. Okay, so let's do this. Beth said, can we explore curveball questions in a later meeting or maybe on a blog post? And that's definitely a yes. Karen has a gazillion of them. And they're fun, and they're direct, and they are curveballs all the time. She does it to me a lot too, just in general.
These are the questions sometimes that I'm having conversations with some clients, and it freaks Jenn out. And I'll come out of my office, she's like, were you just yelling at that person? I'm like, no.
I know. So this gray wall here on my wall and the wall that Karen's facing is a shared wall between our offices, right? And so I can hear her, and then also I'm like, oh my God, who's in trouble? And it's just a very direct style of curveball questions that causes people to think differently. And that's really the essence of provocative questions, right? Which is good. All right, who else has a takeaway from today that they would share?
Hi guys, it's Rena. So I missed a whole lot. Well, I'd say the first 15 minutes. And hi, Tom.
Hi, Rena.
and Karen and everybody else. I missed the first 15 minutes, but I clearly got the takeaway. And that really truly is all of what you just said. It is transformational and it is transactional. And that to me is, I've always kind of known it. You know, I know it, but now I know it with a capital K. I know it in a different way. And yes, because you know, people want to fix things. People want to fix their situations, but they don't necessarily want to, quote unquote, fix themselves. And but once they realize that there is a transformational opportunity here for them, and that we recognize it, and we make it safe, and we make it, you know, just perhaps a bit more compassionate, loving, and sensitized in a positive way, that people can see, oh, Oh, maybe there is something here, but it can go into a whole other direction. So I lead with one question, and that is, when do you, because sometimes, and not, Tom, I'm not referring to you here, but sometimes you can bump into people who genuinely need some professional support in terms of depression or anxiety, or whatever else might show up. So that's where I find myself getting a little perplexed. When do I stop and say, hang on for a second, let's talk about this? So that I have a question and a realization, right?
Right. Okay, good. So yeah, so that's a pretty broad question too, and many different ways to handle that and to know what's really going on. And just a sort of in a nutshell answer, a short nutshell answer is, so is it about talking about it, you don't have to answer this, Rena, but is it about talking about it with the client versus referring somebody to find another support mechanism with it? And there's two different things that are going on there. So it's really when it becomes a place where people cannot move forward because of anxiety or depression or an emotional wound from the past that doesn't even allow them to get out of their story, is when obviously moving on to a different modality is a great way to go. If it is something that's showing up, it's how then is that affecting their current situation or what their goal actually is. So it's not even so much about what is causing it, but how is that then playing out in this situation? What are the connection? Those kinds of things. So we'll address that maybe on a different call, because that's a really big topic, but I'm going to give you a short nutshell answer on that one, okay?
Yep, thanks.
Good. So, okay, so the thing is, I know, Karen, we're going to wrap things up. So if you guys loved this kind of learning and this kind of deconstruction of what it is that we do, and you do love leadership teams, groups, corporate, things like that, you guys already know what I'm about to say. Go ahead and check out our website that has our coach training program in it, because this is how we learn to be a better coach as part of the program. The program is also about tools and EQI and how do you run groups and what are exercises to do. But we also really definitely studied the art and science of how to be a really great coach in a very transactional environment. So that's what I wanted to say there. Tom, thank you so much for being a client and volunteering for being a part of this. And you have my number that you are definitely, please, let's call, let's talk. We'll sort of see where we go from here. And I just really, know, Tom, that you're going to get the support that you need because you're locked and loaded with us for many, many months to come, right? Or as we like to say, a lifetime. So it's good. All right, Kara, anything else? That's it. All right, you guys, if you have questions, go ahead and email us at Jenn at Kickstart Your Edge or Karen at Kickstart Your Edge. And I'm Jenn with 2 N's. And I guess that's it. So thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey, check your Facebook message, Tom, from last week.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Good. Bye.